Officiating in the NHL is often controversial, but it's even more controversial in playoff overtimes. We'll talk about that, plus the hiring of Joel Quenneville and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the Friday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Gil Martin from Locked On Islanders. I'm here every Friday with Rachel Donner of Locked On Flyers. How we doing, Rachel?
We're doing good. I think the second round is always such an interesting time in the Stanley Cup playoffs because you have that first round frenzy, right? And then you get down to 8 teams, but you're still like feeling like the Stanley Cup itself is pretty far off. And this is just like kind of part of the grind. It's almost like the regular season of the playoffs in a lot of ways. And so you don't kind of start feeling like, oh, we're just around the corner from the cup, or my team really has a chance of winning the cup until the next round. So this is like a weird zone of the playoffs for me.
It kind of is. And yet, it's one of those things where if your team is in this round, you realize if you win this, you're in the conference final. You're one of the final four. Yep. So, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but you're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I totally get that. But obviously, one of the things that can sometimes get in the way of that enjoyment is officiating, right?
Yeah, Vegas Golden Knights coach Bruce Cassidy not happy with a non-call on Victor Arvidsson. He got his stick caught between the skates of Braden McNabb. McNabb goes hard into the boards, and no call is made. And then, 17 seconds after the non-call, the game ends on the goal by Leon Draisaitl. So obviously, Cassidy has to walk that line to avoid a fine, but he was not happy with the way that call was not made. What were your thoughts? Because after watching that replay, it's a tough one.
Yeah, it is tough because it's definitely a missed call. Like, Cassidy is correct on that front. And, I think that it's fair to be upset about the non-call. Did it directly lead to the goal? You can kind of say yes or kind of say no. I think you also have to play better defensively, but also Connor McDavid is going to be able to do that kind of thing anyway. I mean, Jack Eichel got burned, and it's not often that you see him get burned like that. True. And so I feel, and McDavid is the guy that can do it. And there's all this narrative around that, of course, but I do think that there is a question to be asked, as we ask almost every year, is do the officials sometimes put their whistles away in order to sort of have a let them play attitude in the playoffs, right?
I think they do, and I think it's even more prevalent in third periods, and even more a factor once you get into overtime. And it's one of those things where I understand the logic of you don't want the officials to decide the game, and I put that in air quotes, but by not making a call that's obvious, you're also deciding the game.
Yeah.
So, it really comes down to if there's a flagrant call, and I think it was clearly a missed call in this instance.
Well, especially because of how hurt he was, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, you blow the whistle, and things should flow differently from that moment on. But if you call the penalty, obviously the goal doesn't happen there. That's not to say that Edmonton doesn't win it, 2 minutes later or 5 minutes later, they might. But when you got a flagrant call like that, you gotta blow the whistle.
Yeah, I think so. And, when you look at this year's playoffs, we've seen, a bunch of OT games. I wouldn't say like any more than usual or less than usual.
Right.
It's about average right now. And that we've seen, one game, especially where a penalty affected an overtime outcome. And that was when the Devils got eliminated. But again, that was a call that is unavoidable to make, right? Like when there's the blood and you have to have a double minor or it's over the glass, like you cannot avoid calling that penalty. It's like the other kind of middle mushy ground there where you have to ask those questions. But I don't know, man. It's a tough call.
It is a tough call, and I I understand the officials not wanting to be, the determining factor in a game, but like I said, not making the call determines it just as easily as making the call does. And to me, the whole key for the officials is consistency. If it's a penalty in the first period, it should be a penalty in the third period and a penalty in overtime. And that way, players, coaches, fans know what the standard is, know what to expect, and they can behave accordingly on the ice. And to me, that's the key. Just having that consistency there, both within a game, within a series, and just as a general way of doing things.
Yeah. And I think it makes it more difficult, I think, for the team that, in this case for Vegas, right, that either didn't get the call they needed because their guy got taken out or, they got called on something that wasn't a call or whatever it is. Right. Like in terms of, especially because again, like 17 seconds later, the game's over. And now you're stewing in the loss as you are stewing in the missed call. And that compounds, I think, the feeling of resentment and the feeling that you just got hosed in the game. And now, especially for Vegas, they're down 2 games. Like, how do you respond in those situations? Because there was almost no time to like let that process and get any recourse for it, right?
Yeah, there was no time. And look, that I guess you could argue is the mark of a championship team, the ability to be resilient when maybe you do get hosed a little bit. And, a non-championship team lets it get to them and doesn't respond in a good way. And a championship team says, you know what, we got to do better. And if we have to beat the other team and the officials, so be it. We're going to do that. Now, I'm not saying that is specifically the case here, but it's the attitude that I'm referring to.
Right. And I think that leads in some cases, especially for non-calls, for teams to play a little closer to the edge of that line because they see a non-call. Now, obviously there's different kinds of non-calls. There's non-calls where so nobody was looking, so they missed it entirely, right? Or they looked at it and decided it wasn't worth blowing the whistle and they were going to let it go. Those are 2 different situations. And I think you can be mad about both of them because you're like, why were you not looking at the play? There's 4 of you out there in stripes and nobody saw it, But like, I think it's a different reason to be mad and a different way to move on from it.
No doubt. No doubt. And, and of course, there's always that lovely situation where one referee decides he doesn't want to call the penalty and the other referee across the other side of the ice calls the very same play.
Right. And you see him like streaking across the ice, very determined to talk to his colleagues. And,
yes.
And you must make this call. We have seen that determined skate many, many times in the past. But yeah, in the playoffs, though, sometimes it just doesn't happen. And I think it's definitely an issue that they do revisit when they evaluate the officials and do kind of recaps and, in terms of the transparency stuff that they're trying to do with the NHL and at the Board of Governors meetings. And, we'll see if they do anything else in the off-season meetings that they have and bring any of these topics up again, because, like we said, it's something that we all on the outside watching these games talk about on a regular basis, and we wouldn't be doing that if it didn't become an issue.
Right. And yet, maybe there's a certain part of the league that wants us to talk about it, that thinks it's good PR for the game, that people are passionate, even if they're not happy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's a little tinfoil hatty for me, but there is a certain kernel of truth to it, and that's why these conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. I'm just saying the league may not dislike the fact that passionate fans are arguing back and forth about the officiating. And look, let's face it, it's not an easy job. The way this game is played, the speed, the size of the players, and the fact that two referees could differ on a call is human nature. So I'm not trying to be overly critical of the officials. You just want as much consistency as you can get.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And so we'll talk later in the show about whether or not Vegas can respond, I guess.
Yeah, we will talk about that. We'll also talk about the Anaheim Ducks controversial new coach. We'll have all that coming up on this episode of the Locked On NHL podcast.
Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you are ready to play. You can dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. If you've ever wanted to try out Xbox games without the big upfront investment in a console, Fire TV Stick 4K can be a low-pressure way to start exploring. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. It's available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot where I need to hire someone like yesterday. The pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. So the Anaheim Ducks hiring Joel Quenneville as their new head coach. The hockey resume is very impressive. 3 Stanley Cup wins. But there are some off-ice issues that make this a little bit of a controversial hiring. Rachel, your thoughts? I could see on your face you've got a lot to say. Your thoughts on Joel Quenneville being the next coach of the Anaheim Ducks?
Yeah, I find it to be like a really poor decision on several fronts. But let's talk about the resume, right? Because it is absolutely there, and I get it. But he is 66 now. He's on the older side, and he's been out of the game for 4 years. And I have to say, the game has changed a lot in the last 4 years. And so I do think there's a question from a pure hockey perspective if he's the right hire for the Ducks. The Ducks have such a young core and some additional prospects coming up that play a different style of game than even existed 5-6 years ago, right? And you look like pre-COVID, right? The game, I think, is very different than it was pre-COVID in many ways. And I think the environment and the structure and the opportunities and the development that these kids have gone through is a very, very different look than existed before. And so I think from a hockey perspective, is Quenneville out of touch? Could be, right?
It's possible. I mean, theoretically, if you're the Anaheim Ducks, you go through the interview process, you kind of are trying to feel that out and figure out whether he's out of touch or how much if he's out of touch. And I guess you're trying to balance the resume, as you say, with that factor and figure out if he's the best candidate. And obviously the Ducks ownership at least feels like he was a good fit.
Sure. I just think there's a lot of questions around that aspect of it, just from a pure hockey perspective. Now, of course, the elephant in the room is he resigned as head coach of the Florida Panthers, which he took a job there after working for the Chicago Blackhawks, where we, of course, know he was named in the investigation around former player Kyle Beach and the sexual assault that happened with the video coach in that situation, and that Quenneville was part of a I don't want to say cover up, but it's very clear that people knew things and they did not communicate them effectively. And this guy then went on to abuse additional people with the recommendations of management at the Blackhawks. And so to me, I feel like we have gotten to a point where that should make Joel Quenneville unhireable. And I don't think, it should make Stan Bowman unhireable. It should make any of them unhireable. And it does not mean that they cannot do the work and learn and get better as people. Like, I don't want to take that away from whatever Joel Quenneville has done to educate himself. And it seemed, based on what they were saying, that he had a conversation with Kyle Beach. And all of that can be true. But also, he does not deserve a head coaching position in the NHL at the same time. That there are some things that you do that you can get redemption as a person, but it doesn't entitle you to a head coaching job in the NHL, of which there are only 32. In the entire world, there are 32 of these jobs. And you cannot tell me that there isn't a qualified guy that could have coached the Ducks that didn't have this on their background.
No doubt about that. But to play devil's advocate here, nobody with 3 Stanley Cup wins on their resume.
Don't care.
I understand that. But that's the counter argument.
Yeah, but that's not a counter argument. That's just not. It's like you're saying that, I mean, it is an argument, but what you're saying is that a hockey resume is more important than the safety of people and a coach doing their job to support and protect the players that they coach. And that is a sick devil's advocate position to take. And I understand it's not you, Gil.
No,
that's
good.
I understand that, but I truly believe that is an absolutely monstrous position to take. And I think that's the position that the Anaheim Ducks have taken, that they have chosen that for whatever reason, that aspect of Joel Quenneville's experience is more important than the unconscionable harm that his actions led to. And I just feel like he does not deserve the job. He should not have the job. I don't feel like thank God it's the Ducks and not my team. No, he should not be anywhere. I feel bad for Ducks fans. And if you look at the comment section of the Anaheim Ducks social media posts where they had to put out a statement, and first off, if you have to put out a statement to defend your choice, it's a bad choice. But I mean, Ducks fans are upset about this too, for the most part. And it's not fair to them. It's not fair for like any Ducks fan who's a survivor wants to show up at a game and has to look at Joel Quenneville's face behind the bench every time. That's not okay either. What do you tell those fans? That 3 Stanley Cups was more important than you're feeling comfortable coming to a game? Like, that's not okay either.
It's a really difficult situation, and it is potentially going to make some people feel uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
we'll see how well. Do you think he has a shorter leash, so to speak, because of this situation?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know what, given this decision, I could not tell you what management and ownership are going to be thinking in this case. I don't know, because clearly they did not put enough consideration into this, no matter what they're saying about it, and no matter what, in terms of reputation washing they're doing in sections of the media. I just don't think that they have shown that they care. And so who knows? Who knows what they'll be thinking moving forward?
Well, we will see. But as of right now, Joel Quenneville is the new head coach of the Anaheim Ducks. And it is certainly, like you said, there are fans who are not happy about that. I'm sure there are some fans who are happy about it, but there is that elephant in the room, as you eloquently put it.
Well, but also, I just want to make a point that if Joel Quenneville wanted to return to hockey and do something productive to make good on the harm he did, there are other ways he could have done it besides becoming a head coach. They could have created a job for him with the league level to educate people. That would have been a great thing for him to do. He could have taken like a consulting role with a team. I think that in terms of, so there's no direct connection to players. There are many other things he could have done to return to hockey that's not this. And I think there's room for that discussion.
Yeah, there's definitely room for that discussion. And right now, that discussion is not going to be had because he doesn't have the Anaheim Ducks head coaching position. All right, we've got more to get to on today's show. Round 2 of the playoffs well underway. We'll talk about which of these series we think might be most likely to go a full 7 games. We've got that and more coming up on the Friday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and to win big. If you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with a same-game parlay? How could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement for you if your first $5 bet hits? If you're new to FanDuel, this is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. That's $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. So here we are, round 2. We've got these 4 series. They're all underway now. Let's start with Washington and Carolina, all even right now at 1 apiece.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting rest of the second round here, especially, looking at who might be able to extend this series to 7 games. And right now, with this one tied at 1, obviously there is a more significant possibility here. And I think, it feels like, again, even though the Caps won game 2, Carolina still played their game pretty consistently in a lot of ways. Now, I think that they got unlucky in some ways and Washington was able to step it up in some ways, but I really feel like this is a Carolina in 6 situation, but it could go to 7 games because I would not count this Caps team out. It's just a matter of, to me, are they going to run out of gas? Whereas I don't think Carolina's could run out of gas here.
Yeah, I don't think Carolina runs out of gas. I just wonder whether or not they they always seem to find a way to fall just short in the playoffs. They haven't completed
for me,
that
it'll
run.
be in the next round.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It's one of those things where they've been among the favorites for so long. And, is that in the back of their minds in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I don't know, but I do think this could go 7. This could
Absolutely.
absolutely go 7.
How about Toronto and Florida? The Leafs up 2-0 in this series, although it shifts back to Florida for games 3 and 4.
Yeah, part of me is like, I need to see game 3 to know the answer to this question in this series. Because I think that this is a very resilient Florida team, but I also think there's something different about this Toronto team. And I just, will this go to 7? I don't think so, but prove me wrong, Florida.
I mean, the thing about this Toronto team, I think for the first time in a long time, they're built to win in the playoffs more than ever before. And, in the past, they've had to sort of adjust their style once the playoffs got underway. Now, this is just the way they play. And I think it's a big advantage for the Maple Leafs this year.
Yeah, I think so. I really think that they've put together, a level of play that even when they themselves falter a little bit, they can recover from that. And I think that's what's different about this team is that even when they make mistakes, I feel like they know how to move on from them a little bit better and not let it get to their heads too much.
And that makes a big difference over the course of a 7-game playoff series. I don't think this one goes 7, but you know what? Florida won the Cup last year. They went to the Cup final the year before. They also know how to get the job done in the postseason. So it'll be interesting to see how that series plays out. Like you said, I think game 3 will be critical to see the length of the series. How about the Central Division, which I think was the deepest entering the playoffs, and just some great hockey being played right now. Dallas up on Winnipeg 1-0. I think this one could go 7.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I want it to go 7. Like if there's any series that goes 7, I want it to be this one. And especially, obviously we saw Dallas go 7 games to win over Colorado. And Winnipeg goes 7 games to win over St. Louis. So for this series to go 7 games only makes sense in the big picture of things, that these teams know how to win, but they also know how to lose. And with goaltending, obviously that's like kind of the specter hanging over Winnipeg. Is like Hellebuck going to be able to keep it up for a full series? And can Dallas like take advantage of situations that they should, or are they going to miss the net a lot? I think there's a lot going on there, but literally if any other series goes to game 7, it should be this one. And I certainly hope it does.
I love to see it because it's just great hockey. I don't have a dog in this fight, so to just watch 7 great games between these two teams, sign me up. But here's a question for you. They both went 7 games in round 1. If they go 7 games in round 2, are they starting to wear down as you get to the conference final?
Well, and this is where, we can bring in the Vegas Edmonton series into it. Now, we talked all about that missed call and will Vegas play with a chip on their shoulders, but Edmonton just looks so good right now.
Do.
And I feel like, does Edmonton have a leg up on a 7-game series winner between Winnipeg and Dallas? Absolutely they do, right?
If they can win the series in 5 or 6, or 4 even. I mean, the shorter the series is with Vegas, the bigger the advantage I think they'll have over whoever wins the Central Division series. So I think it's definitely a factor. And Vegas is down 2-0 with the series heading back to Edmonton. So that doesn't bode well.
Yeah, I think so. And that's what's so, I think, cool about these playoffs is I feel like the West is so different from the East and how things are playing out and the style of play. And I really feel like the West, in terms of the action and how things are going, is the more interesting of the two. But again, we'll see how those other series on the East play out. But yeah, if I had to put money on it, I would say Winnipeg, Dallas, and secondarily Washington, Carolina are the two series that might go 7.
Yeah, that would be my two choices also. And you say the West Coast or Western Conference series are probably more likely to go 7, maybe a little more interesting, but you also have to stay up later if you're on the East Coast to watch.
That is true. Give me Central Time. Just everything in Winnipeg. That's all I need.
Little details, right?
Yeah,
Little details. All right. Well, I want to thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Don't forget, we're here Monday through Saturday, bringing you Locked On NHL. Rachel, I know you'll be here with Erica L. Ayala doing the Women's Hockey Spotlight tomorrow. We're looking forward.
And we're doing that live. So
10:30
a.m. Eastern.
Looking forward to that. I'll be back on Monday interviewing 3 of our local hosts with the biggest stories from around the league. So have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks so much for watching and listening to the Locked On NHL podcast. And we'll be back tomorrow.